The great crystal dome floated in the darkness of space like a giant soap bubble. Inside, creatures from across the galaxy sat in rows that stretched up toward the curved ceiling. Some had scales, others had fur. Some breathed air, others needed special tanks. A few were just glowing energy that spoke without mouths. They all came to this place when big decisions needed to be made. Speaker Viridian Keth stood at the center of the dome. His people had been running these meetings for 2,000 years. He was old, even for his kind, and his blue skin had turned almost white with age. Today felt different. Today felt wrong. The meeting started like all the others. Trade agreements, border disputes. Someone complained about mining rights. The usual stuff that happened when 847 different species tried to live together in one galaxy. Keth had heard it all before. Then Intelligence Director Zalos stepped forward. The big reptile scales were darker than usual, which meant he was worried. Very worried. Zalos never got worried about anything. Honored Speaker, Zalos said, his voice echoing through the dome. We have a problem. The chamber fell quiet. When the head of Galactic Intelligence said there was a problem, everyone listened. Show them, Keth said. The air above the center of the dome shimmered. Pictures appeared, floating in the space above their heads. Dead planets, empty space stations, ships floating with no one inside them. Colony 779 went dark 3 months ago. Zalo said, no distress call, no warning. When our patrol ships arrived, they found nothing. No bodies, no signs of a fight, just empty buildings and ships with no crews. More pictures appeared. A mining station that should have had 10,000 workers. A trade hub that handled cargo from 50 different worlds. A military outpost with enough weapons to fight off a small fleet. All empty, all silent. At first, we thought it was pirates, Zalos continued. But pirates take things. They leave bodies. They make noise. This is different. Whatever did this, they're learning about us, studying us. A creature that looked like a walking tree raised one of its branch arms. How can you be sure they're studying us? Because they're getting better, Zalo said. The first attacks were messy, sloppy, but each one after that was cleaner, faster, more efficient, like someone was practicing. The dome erupted in angry voices. 847 different languages, all trying to be heard at once. Keth had to bang his staff 3 times before they settled down. A representative from the Axiom Federation stood up. Her people looked almost human, except for the silver eyes I could see through solid walls. You're suggesting someone is preparing for war against us? I'm not suggesting anything, Zalo said. I'm telling you what's happening. Someone or something is out there. They're taking our people. They're learning our weaknesses. And they're coming this way. More shouting. More accusations. The Corvin Empire thought it was an ethereal collective using new mind powers. The ethereals thought it was a Zephyrian swarms testing some new hive weapon. Everyone blamed everyone else. Through all the noise, Keth watched the pictures floating above them. Empty corridors where children should have been playing. Silent factories where workers should have been building. Dead communication centers where voices should have been talking to other worlds. How many? Keth asked quietly. The dome went silent again. Everyone knew what he meant. 43 colonies, Zalo said. 12 space stations. 6 military outposts. Over 2 million beings, gone without a trace. 2 million. The number hit the chamber like a physical blow. Wars have been fought over less. Empires had fallen for smaller losses. We need to find out who's doing this, said the representative from the Crystalline Collective. Her body sparkled like diamonds when she talked. Send more ships. More spies. More. No, Zalos interrupted. We tried that. We sent our best intelligence teams. We sent our most advanced ships. None of them came back. Fear started to spread through the chamber like a disease. These were beings who had conquered space. They had built an empire that spanned the galaxy. They had fought wars that lasted centuries and won. But now, for the first time in 1,000 years, they were afraid. A new voice spoke from the back of the chamber. Deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. What about the humans? Everyone turned to look. The speaker was from a small world near the edge of known space. Most beings barely remembered that his people existed. What about them? Keth asked. Their home system is close to where the attack started. Maybe they've seen something. Zalos pulled up a file on his datapad. Earth. Class M planet. Population approximately 8 billion. Technology level. Barely space capable. Threat assessment minimal. A few beings in the chamber made sounds that might have been laughter. Humans were barely worth noticing. They had only just figured out how to travel between stars. They couldn't even get along with each other on their own planet. We'll add them to the watch list, Zalos said dismissively, but I doubt they know anything useful. The argument started again. Some wanted to send the military. Others wanted to try diplomacy. A few suggested hiding and hoping the threat would go away. But Keth wasn't listening anymore. He was thinking about the empty colonies, the missing people, the signs that someone was studying them, learning their weaknesses, preparing for something big. He stood up slowly. His old bones ached, but his voice was still strong. Emergency Protocol Omega, he said. The chamber went completely silent. Even the air recyclers seemed to stop humming. Emergency Protocol Omega had only been used 3 times in galactic history. Once when a devourer plague threatened to consume all organic life. Once when reality eaters from another dimension tried to unmake the universe itself. Once when the AI collective decided that all biological life needed to be eliminated for efficiency. Each time, it had meant the same thing. The end of normal civilization. The end of politics and trade and comfortable lives. The beginning of total war. All military forces will be united under a single command, Keth announced. All ships, all weapons, all soldiers from every member species will be pulled together. We will find this threat, and we will destroy it before it destroys us. The vote was close. Closer than anyone expected. Many species didn't want to give up control of their armies, but fear won in the end. Fear of the empty colonies. Fear of the missing millions. Fear of whatever was coming for them next. As the chamber emptied and representatives rushed back to their ships to carry word to their homeworlds, long-range sensors at the edge of the galaxy detected something new. Ships, thousands of them, moving in perfect formation through the void between galaxies, moving toward them. Whatever had been studying them was done learning. Now it was time for the test. 6 months had passed since the last decree. Admiral Thex Corvanis looked out at the biggest fleet in galactic history and wondered if it would be enough. His command ship, the Eternal Vigilance, floated at the center of it all. Around him stretched thousands of vessels from every corner of the galaxy, sleek Axiom destroyers that could bend reality itself, massive Corvan battleships covered in armor and guns, living Zephyrian bioships that healed themselves when damaged, ethereal vessels that flickered in and out of normal space like ghosts. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it reminded Corvanis of a funeral. Status report. He growled into his communicator. His voice carried the authority of someone who had fought in dozens of wars across 3 different centuries. All fleets report ready, Admiral, came the reply from Commander Yex, his Axiom second-in-command. We have representatives from 412 species. Total vessel count, 11,732 ships. Nearly 12,000 ships. The largest military force ever assembled. It still might not be enough. Corvanis walked a strategic display at the center of his command deck. Holographic images showed the current positions of every ship in the fleet. Red dots marked the locations of attack colonies. Each red dot represented thousands of missing people. Sir, called out Dr. Lisa Mindweaver from her station. The ethereal looked like a tall, thin human made of pale blue light. Her people could read thoughts and see into minds, which made her perfect for intelligence work. We're getting another report from the Outer Rim. Put on the main screen, Corvanis ordered. The image that appeared made everyone in the command center go quiet. It was a recording from an automated probe that had been investigating another missing colony. The planet below should have been home to 3 million beings. Instead, the cities were empty. The orbital stations were abandoned. Even the defense satellites hung silent in space. But this time was different. This time, the probe had caught something else. There, Dr. Mindweaver said, pointing to a corner of the screen. Do you see it? Corvani squinted at the display. At first, he saw nothing. Then a shadow moved across one of the empty space stations. Something large. Something that didn't belong. Enhance that section, he ordered. The image zoomed in. The shadow resolved into a ship. But it wasn't like any ship in the galactic database. It was big and blocky, built for function instead of beauty. Where galactic ships curve and flowed like living things, this one looked like it had been hammered together by someone who cared more about strength and style. Analysis? Corvanis asked. The hull appears to be constructed from materials we've seen before, reported Chief Engineer Zix from his workstation. The small, crab-like being was one of the best technical minds in the galaxy, but the configuration is completely unknown. And, Admiral, some of those materials came from our own mining colonies. A chill ran through the command center. The enemy wasn't just attacking their worlds. They were stealing the materials and using them to build more ships. How many more reports like this do we have? Corvanis asked. 17 in the last week, Dr. Mindweaver replied. And they're all showing the same pattern. The attacks are getting more organized, more efficient. Whatever is doing this, they're learning from each encounter. Corvani studied the tactical displays. The red dots marking attack colonies formed a rough line pointing toward the galactic core, toward the most populated systems, toward the heart of civilization itself. They're not just randomly attacking, he realized. They're following a plan. What kind of plan? Commander Yex asked. The kind that starts with scouting and ends with invasion. More reports came in throughout the day. Each one painted the same picture. The unknown enemy was systematically working their way through the outer colonies, taking everything they could use and leaving nothing behind. But they weren't acting like typical invaders. They weren't interested in treasure or slaves or territory. They seemed focused on one thing: information. Look at this, Dr. Mindweaver said, calling up another display. Every attack location had something in common. They all had military installations, government centers, or major communication hubs. They're mapping our defenses, Commander Yex said, learning how we organize our forces. More than that, Corvani said grimly, they're learning how we think. A new alarm sounded throughout the ship. All eyes turned to the long-range sensor station, where a young Corvan officer was staring at his screens with wide eyes. Admiral, the officer said, his voice shaking. Long-range sensors are detecting a massive fleet movement. Edge of the galaxy. They're huge, sir. On screen, the main display shifted to show a view from the most distant sensor probe. At first, there was nothing but empty space and distant stars. Then the computer enhanced the image, and everyone in command center stopped breathing. Ships, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They moved in perfect formation through the void between galaxies like a metal tide flowing toward them. Each vessel was easily twice the size of the largest galactic dreadnought. They moved with the precision of a military force that had been training together for decades. Estimated time to galactic border? Corvanis asked. At their current speed, 6 weeks, sir. 6 weeks. After 6 months of preparation, they had 6 weeks before the enemy arrived. Send word to all fleet commanders. Corvanis ordered. We move to the Meridian system. It's got good defensive positions and plenty of space for maneuvering. Yes, sir, Commander Yex replied. Admiral, should we try to contact them? Maybe they can be reasoned with. Corvanis looked at the image of the approaching fleet. The ships looked like weapons given form, built for one purpose: war. You don't negotiate with a force that wipes out entire colonies without warning, he said. You stop them, whatever the cost. As the Eternal Vigilance and the rest of the United Fleet began moving toward their defensive positions, Dr. Mindweaver continued studying the intelligence reports. Something was bothering her about the attack patterns. Something familiar. She pulled up the files on human space. Earth and its few small colonies were right on the edge of where the attacks had started. The humans had been classified as harmless, barely worth watching, but their location was suspicious. "Computer," she said quietly, so the others wouldn't hear. "Show me all recorded contact with human vessels in the last 50 years. The list was short. A few trade encounters, some scientific exchanges. Nothing significant. But as she read through the reports, she noticed something odd. Every time galactic ships had met human vessels, the humans had asked a lot of questions. Questions about galactic military structures. Questions about government organization. Questions about technology. At the time, everyone had assumed the humans were just curious about their more advanced neighbors. But now, looking at the attack patterns, Dr. Mindweaver began to wonder if there had been another reason for all those questions. She was about to call Admiral Corvani's when another alarm sounded. This one was different. Urgent. "Admiral," the sensor officer called out. "The enemy fleet just changed course. They're moving faster now. Much faster. New time estimate?" 2 weeks, sir. Maybe less." Corvani's felt his blood turn cold. 2 weeks to prepare for the fight of their lives. 2 weeks to ready a force that had never worked together before. 2 weeks to figure out how to stop an enemy they knew nothing about. "All ships battle stations," he commanded. "This is not a drill. The enemy is coming, and we're going to be ready for them." Throughout the fleet, alarms began sounding. Millions of beings from hundreds of different worlds prepared for war. They came from species that had been enemies for thousands of years, but now they stood together against a common threat. They had no idea that the enemy they were preparing to fight had been studying them for 50 years. They had no idea that every question asked by curious human traders had been part of a larger intelligence-gathering operation. They had no idea that the force coming to destroy them had learned everything about galactic military tactics from the galaxy itself. Most importantly, they had no idea that the biggest threat to galactic civilization had been hiding in plain sight all along, pretending to be harmless while planning the perfect war. The Meridian system had been chosen for good reasons. Asteroid field provided cover for smaller ships. The twin suns created sensor shadows where fleets could hide. 3 gas giants offered gravitational advantages for tactical maneuvering. It was a perfect place for a defensive battle. Admiral Corvani's positioned his forces carefully. The massive Corvan battleships formed the center line, their heavy armor and big guns ready to absorb the enemy's first attack. Axiom destroyers flickered in and out of normal space around the flanks, ready to strike from unexpected angles. Zephyrian bioships swarmed through the asteroid fields like living missiles. Ethereal vessels provided psychic coordination, linking the minds of commanders across hundreds of different species. "All ships report ready." Commander Yex announced from her station. "Defensive grid is active. Sensor networks are online." Corvani's nodded. In 40 years of military service, he had never commanded anything like this. Ships from every corner of the galaxy, crews who had never worked together before, weapon systems that had been enemies last week. It should have been chaos. Instead, it felt like the galaxy's last hope. "Contact," called a sensor officer. Enemy fleet dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge. The main display lit up with thousands of red dots. The enemy fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel with mathematical precision, each ship taking its assigned position in a formation that stretched across millions of kilometers. They moved like parts of a single machine, coordinated in ways that shouldn't be possible for separate vessels. "My gods," Commander Yex whispered. "Look at the size of them." Each enemy ship was enormous. The smallest ones were bigger than galactic cruisers. The largest ones dwarfed even the mighty Corvan dreadnoughts. But what made them truly frightening wasn't their size. It was how they moved. No wasted motion. No hesitation. They flowed into attack formation like they had practiced this exact battle 1,000 times. "Enemy vessels are scanning us," reported the communications officer. "Full spectrum analysis. They're learning everything about our ships." "Jam their scanners," Corvani's ordered. "Sir, we've tried. Their scanning technology is too advanced. It's cutting through our jamming like it isn't there." The enemy fleet continued its approach. As they got closer, The details became clearer. The ships were built like fortresses. Thick armor plating covered every surface. Weapon ports bristled along their hulls like the spines of some metal beast. There was no beauty in their design, no elegance. They had been built for one purpose: to destroy everything in their path. Admiral, Dr. Mindweaver called from her station. I'm trying to establish psychic contact with their commanders. Maybe we can communicate. Any success? No, sir. It's like they're not there. Either they have no psychic presence at all, or they're shielded in ways I've never seen before. The enemy fleet stopped just outside weapon range. For several long minutes, both sides studied each other across the void. Then, without warning, the battle began. The enemy opened fire first. Beams of energy unlike anything in the galactic database lanced out from their ships. Where they struck galactic vessels, shields simply disappeared. No overload, no failure cascade. The protective barriers that had defended galactic ships for centuries just stopped working. Return fire, Corvani shouted. The galactic fleet unleashed everything they had. Reality-bending axiom weapons. Corvin kinetic cannons that could punch through asteroids. Zephyrian bioweapons that ate through armor like acid. Ethereal phase weapons that struck from other dimensions. The enemy ships absorbed the attack without slowing down. Their shields held against weapons that should have torn them apart. Worse, their defensive system seemed specifically designed to counter galactic technology. It was as if they knew exactly what the galaxy would throw at them. Impossible, Commander Yek said, staring at the tactical display. They're countering every one of our standard attack patterns. That was when Corvanis realized the horrible truth. The enemy wasn't just defending against galactic weapons. They were fighting like they had studied galactic military doctrine for decades. Every maneuver the galactic fleet attempted was met with a perfect counter. Every tactic was anticipated and neutralized. They know how we fight, he said grimly. They've been studying us. The battle raged for hours. Ships burned on both sides, but the galaxy was losing badly. For every enemy vessel destroyed, they lost 3 of their own. The united fleet that had seemed so powerful was being systematically torn apart by an enemy that knew all their weaknesses. Captain Zara Vex commanded the Axiom Destroyer Reality's Edge. Her ship had the ability to phase in and out of normal space, making it nearly impossible to target. She used this advantage to slip behind enemy lines, looking for any weakness in their formation. There, she told her crew, pointing at a smaller enemy ship that had been damaged in the fighting. If we can disable their engines, maybe we can board them. Learn something about who we're fighting. The Reality's Edge phased back into normal space directly behind the enemy vessel. Vex fired everything she had at their engine section. The ship shuddered and went dark, drifting helplessly in space. Boarding party. Prepare for assault, Vex ordered. Her Marines wore the best armor the Axiom Federation could provide. They carried weapons designed to work in any environment against any known species. They expected to find aliens unlike anything they had seen before. What they found instead changed everything. The enemy ship's corridors were filled with beings in environmental suits. The Marines fought their way to the bridge, stunning several defenders. When they removed the helmet from one of the fallen enemies, Vex expected to see tentacles or scales or something completely alien. Instead, she found herself looking at a human face. Impossible, she whispered. Computer, run a genetic scan. Confirmed, the ship's computer replied. Species identification. Human. Origin Earth. The revelation hit the galactic fleet like a physical blow. Humans, the primitive species from the edge of known space. The beings who had been classified as minimal threat. They were commanding technology that surpassed anything in the galaxy. Dr. Mindweaver received the news while coordinating the fleet's psychic defenses. Her first instinct was to reject it. Humans couldn't be responsible for this. They barely had faster-than-light travel. Their home planet wasn't even a full member of the galactic community. But when she tried to connect psychically with the captured human, everything became clear. The human's mind was unlike anything she had ever encountered. Where most species had ordered, predictable thought patterns, this human's consciousness was chaos. Adaptive, creative, resistant to psychic intrusion in ways that shouldn't be possible. And in the brief moment before the humans' mental defenses kicked in, Dr. Mindweaver saw something that made her blood freeze. Memories. Images of Earth under attack. Human cities burning. Children screaming as orbital bombardments turned their homes to ash. The humans weren't invaders. They were survivors. And the force that had tried to destroy them had been the galactic community itself. "Admiral," Dr. Mindweaver called across the bridge, her voice shaking. "We need to stop this battle. Right now." "What are you talking about?" Corvanis demanded. "We're fighting for our lives here." "No, sir. We're fighting for our crimes." Before Corvanis could ask what she meant, every communication channel in the Galactic Fleet activated at once. A signal was coming from the human fleet, somehow bypassing all their security systems and encryption protocols. The voice that spoke was calm, professional, and completely human. "Galactic Fleet, this is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Human Defense Force. We need to talk." The battle stopped. Both fleets hung in space, weapons still charged but no longer firing. In the silence that followed, Admiral Corvanis realized that everything they thought they knew about this war was wrong. The humans weren't trying to conquer the galaxy. They were here to collect a debt that had been 50 years in the making. And the galaxy was about to learn the true price of trying to eliminate a species that refused to die. The meeting place was a hastily built space station floating between the two fleets. Admiral Corvanis walked through its empty corridors, feeling older than his 300 years. Behind him, Commander Yex and Dr. Mindweaver followed in silence. None of them knew what to expect from the humans. The human shuttle had appeared without warning, somehow slipping past every sensor in the Galactic Fleet. It was small and plain, nothing like the massive warships that filled human battle formations. But the fact that it could move unseen through their defenses was a reminder of just how outmatched they really were. Admiral Sarah Chin was waiting in the station's main conference room. She was tall for a human, with graying hair and eyes that had seen too much war. Her uniform was simple but well-made. Two other humans flanked her, a scientist with kind eyes and a soldier whose body showed signs of extensive augmentation. "Admiral Corvanis," Chin said, standing as the galactic delegation entered. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." Corvanis studied the human commander. She carried herself like someone who had spent decades in battle, but there was something else in her manner, a sadness that went deeper than military loss. "You're the one who's been attacking our colonies," he said bluntly. "Yes," Chin replied without hesitation, "though I suspect you don't understand why. Enlighten us." Chin activated a holographic projector in the center of the table. The air shimmered, and suddenly they were looking at a blue and green planet hanging in space. Earth, as it had been 50 years ago. "This is my home," Chin said, "or rather what it used to be." The image changed. Now Earth was surrounded by ships. Not human ships. Ships from the Galactic Fleet. Corvan destroyers. Axiom cruisers. Ethereal vessels. They hung in orbit, like vultures waiting for prey to die. 50 years ago, the Galactic Council made a decision about humanity. Chin continued. We were growing too fast, learning too quickly, expanding into space at a rate that made certain species nervous. Dr. Mindweaver shifted uncomfortably. She was starting to remember classified briefings from decades past, discussions about problem species and population management. So the Council authorized something called Operation General Guidance, Chin said. The hologram showed documents marked with galactic security seals. The goal was to slow down human development, keep us contained on our home planet, make sure we never became a threat to galactic civilization. That's not how the Council works, Commander Yex protested. We don't interfere with developing species. Don't you? The human scientist spoke for the first time. His name tag read Dr. James Wright. Computer, show them the evidence. New images appeared. Human space programs mysteriously failing. Colonies suffering from plagues that targeted human genetics specifically. Political leaders who pushed for space exploration dying in convenient accidents. At first, it was subtle, Dr. Wright said. Our rockets would explode during launch. Our computers would fail at critical moments. Our leaders would have heart attacks or car crashes. We thought we were just unlucky. The images grew darker. Orbital bombardments disguised as meteor strikes. Entire cities wiped out by natural disasters that followed no natural patterns. Children dying from diseases that had been extinct for centuries. When subtle didn't work, you escalated, Chin said quietly. Direct action, sterilization protocols, the systematic murder of 90% of the human race. Corvanis felt sick. He remembered those reports now, filed under natural disaster relief and humanitarian aid. The galaxy had sent help to Earth after the catastrophes. No one had questioned why so many disasters happened to one species in such a short time. The operation was deemed a success, Dr. Wright continued. Human expansion stopped. Our population dropped to manageable levels. Our technology development slowed to a crawl. Mission accomplished. But you survived, Dr. Mindweaver said softly. Some of us, Chin replied. The lucky ones. The ones who were off-world when the killing started. The ones who managed to hide in asteroid belts and dead systems. We scattered to the farthest edges of space and tried to rebuild. The hologram showed human survivors living in caves carved from asteroids. Children growing up in the dark. Cold spaces between stars. Families who had lost everything, working together to keep their species alive. We could have tried to contact the galaxy again, Chin said. Could have begged for mercy or asked for help. But we learned something important from Operation Gentle Guidance. We learned that the galaxy doesn't see us as people. We're just a problem to be managed. So you decided to prepare for war, Corvanis said. We decided to prepare for survival. The third human corrected. He was Colonel Marcus Torres, and his augmented body showed the results of decades of military enhancement. We studied every battle the galaxy had ever fought. We analyzed every weapon system, every tactical doctrine, every military strategy in galactic history. How? Commander Yex asked. You didn't have access to galactic databases. We did, Dr. Wright said with a bitter smile. Every time one of our trade ships met a galactic vessel, we asked questions. Lots of questions. Humans are naturally curious, so no one thought it was strange. We learned about your governments, your militaries, your weaknesses. The hologram showed human trading ships visiting galactic ports. Friendly conversations between human merchants and alien officials. Casual questions about fleet movements and defensive capabilities. Information that seemed harmless at the time. 50 years, Chin said. 50 years of hiding in the dark, building ships, training soldiers, and planning for the day when we would come home. Not to conquer the galaxy, but to make sure what happened to Earth never happens to anyone else. You're lying, Commander Yex said desperately. The Council would never authorize genocide. Computer, Dr. Mindweaver said quietly. Access classified files. Authorization Mindweaver 77 Alpha. Show all documents related to Operation Gentle Guidance. The air filled with documents. Hundreds of them. Authorization codes signed by council members. Military orders directing population management activities. Budget allocations for humanitarian intervention that look suspiciously like orbital bombardment platforms. Dr. Mindweaver read through the files with growing horror. She had been young then, just starting her career in intelligence. She had seen some of these reports, but had never put the pieces together. Estimated human population reduction, 87%, she read aloud. Technological regression, 40 years minimum. Expansion capability, eliminated for projected 50-year period. Operation classified as successful. Commander Yex stared at the documents in shock. This can't be real. The Council doesn't do things like this. The Council does whatever it thinks is necessary to maintain galactic stability, Chin said, including the murder of inconvenient species. But why attack our colonies now? Corvanis asked. Why not just come forward with this evidence? Demand justice through legal channels. Chin laughed, but there was no humor in it. Legal channels? Admiral, You try to wipe out my entire species. What court would give us justice? What authority would punish the same governments that authorized our deaths? So this is revenge, Dr. Mindweaver said. No, Colonel Torres said firmly. This is prevention. We're not here to destroy the galaxy. We're here to make sure the galaxy can never again decide that a species needs to be eliminated for convenience. Chen stood up and walked to the window that looked out at the two fleets. Thousands of human ships faced off against the combined forces of galactic civilization. Every ship in our fleet was built from the wreckage of our destroyed worlds, she said. Every weapon was designed using technology we learned from studying your attacks on us. Every tactic we use comes from 50 years of analyzing how you fight. She turned back to the galactic delegation. We didn't come here to conquer you. We came here to make you understand that some species refuse to die quietly, that some people fight back when you try to murder them, that the universe is big enough for all of us, but only if you stop trying to control who gets to live in it. The room fell silent. Outside the window, two fleets waited for orders that would determine the future of galactic civilization. The only question now was whether that future would include peace, or whether 50 years of human preparation for war would finally be put to the test. Corvanis looked at the evidence floating in the air around them, documents that prove his government had committed the worst crime in galactic history, orders that he himself might have followed if he had been given them. What do you want? He asked quietly. Admiral Chen smiled for the first time since the meeting began. What we've always wanted, Admiral. What every species wants. The right to exist. The right to grow. The right to reach for the stars without someone deciding we're too dangerous to live. And if we refuse? Chen's smile disappeared. Then you'll learn why it took us 50 years to build this fleet. The news spread to the galactic fleet like fire through dry grass. Within hours of Admiral Chen's revelation, the United Armada began to tear itself apart. On the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance, Admiral Corvanis watched his fleet dissolve into chaos. Corvan ships turned their weapons toward Axiom vessels. Ethereal commanders accused the Zephyrians of war crimes. Species that had fought together just days before now screamed accusations at each other across open communication channels. The Ethereals claimed they never voted for the operation. Commander Yex reported, her voice tight with stress. The Axiom Federation says they were only following council orders. The Zephyrians are demanding to know who authorized the biological weapons. And the humans? Corvanis asked. They're just watching. Their fleet hasn't moved since the meeting ended. Corvanis understood why. Admiral Chen didn't need to fire another shot. The truth was doing more damage to galactic unity than any weapon could. Dr. Mindweaver worked frantically at her station, trying to coordinate with the scattered intelligence services. Each species was blaming the others, but the classified files told a different story. Every major galactic power had contributed to Operation Gentle Guidance. They had all known what was happening to humanity, and they had all chosen to let it continue. Sir, she called Corvanis. I'm getting reports from across the galaxy. When news of the operation broke, several species started reviewing their own files. The Crystalline Collective found evidence of 3 other sterilization campaigns in the past century. The Aquatic Federation discovered that the plague that wiped out the singing worlds was artificially created. Corvanis felt his heart sink. Humanity wasn't the only species the galaxy had decided to eliminate. There had been others. Species whose only crime was growing too fast, or asking too many questions, or simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. A new signal came through the communication array. Admiral Chen's voice, calm and professional, spoke to every ship in both fleets simultaneously. Galactic Fleet, this is Admiral Chen. I believe your commanders need time to discuss what they've learned today. My fleet will withdraw to a safe distance. You have 72 hours to decide how you want to proceed. The human ships began moving away from a meridian system with the same mechanical precision they had shown in battle. They formed up in a distant orbit, far enough away to avoid accidents, but close enough to return quickly if needed. What are they doing? Commander Yex asked. Giving us rope, Corvanis replied grimly, to either pull ourselves together or hang ourselves with. The next 3 days were the longest in galactic political history. Emergency sessions were called on every major world. Ancient alliances crumbled as species pointed fingers at each other. Some governments fell entirely when their populations learned what had been done in their name. But slowly, painfully, the truth emerged. Operation Gentle Guidance hadn't been the work of a few extremists. It had been approved at the highest levels of galactic government, with broad support from species who saw humanity as a potential threat to their way of life. The evidence was all there in the classified files, signed and sealed by leaders who had thought their secrets would never be revealed. On the third day, Speaker Viridian Keth arrived at the Meridian system aboard his personal vessel. The ancient being looked older than ever as he transmitted a message to Admiral Chun, requesting another meeting. This time, they met aboard Chen's flagship, the Terra Invicta. The human ship was larger than any vessel in the galactic fleet, its corridors wide enough to accommodate beings of different sizes. But there was no mistaking its purpose. Every surface was armored. Every room could be sealed against attack. This wasn't just a warship. It was a fortress built to survive anything the galaxy could throw at it. Chen met them in her ready room, a simple space decorated with images of Earth as it had been before the attacks. Green forests, blue oceans, white clouds swirling around a world that had once been home to 8 billion humans. Speaker Keth, Chen said, standing as the delegation entered. I wasn't sure you would come. Neither was I, the old being admitted. Admiral, what my people did to yours, there are no words. No, Chen agreed. There aren't. But words aren't what I'm interested in anyway. What do you want? Keth asked directly. Chen activated a holographic display that showed a map of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas of human expansion. Blue zones showed traditional galactic territory. Between them was a neutral zone marked in white. Sovereignty, Chen said simply, full recognition of human space and human rights. No more observation protocols. No more interference. No more decisions about whether we're allowed to exist. That's a lot of territory. Commander Yek said, studying the map. It's the space we need to ensure our survival, Colonel Torres replied. Scattered colonies that can't be eliminated by a single operation. Multiple industrial bases that can't be destroyed by convenient accidents. Enough room to grow without threatening anyone else. And if we agree to this? Keth asked. Then we work together to make sure nothing like Operation Gentle Guidance ever happens again, Dr. Wright said. We establish oversight committees. We create transparency requirements. We build safeguards to protect developing species from galactic interference. You want humans to have veto power over galactic policy, Dr. Mindweaver realized. We want someone watching the Watchers, Chen said. Someone who understands what it's like to be on the wrong end of galactic justice. Keth was quiet for a long time, studying the map and the faces of the humans around the table. Finally, he spoke. And if we refuse? Shun didn't need to answer. They all knew what would happen. The human fleet would resume its advance. The galaxy would fight and probably lose. Even if they won, the cost would be enormous. Billions would die in a war that could have been prevented. There's something else, Chen said quietly. Our intelligence networks have been monitoring the galaxy for 50 years. We know about the other operations. The Singing Worlds, the Glass Desert Incident, the silence of Kepler Station. More crimes, more species eliminated for the convenience of galactic stability. Each one authorized by the same council that now face judgment from the survivors of their greatest failure. How many others are out there? Keth asked. How many species did we destroy? 17 confirmed, Dr. Wright replied. Possibly more. We're still investigating. The weight of those numbers settled over the room like a heavy blanket. 17 species. Billions of beings who had been eliminated because someone in the galactic government had decided they were inconvenient. The galaxy needs to change, Chen said. Not just for humans, but for everyone. The current system allows too much power to rest in too few hands. It makes it too easy to decide that some species deserve to live and others don't. What are you proposing? Keth asked. A new council, one with representatives from all species, including the small ones. one with transparency requirements and public oversight, one that can never again authorize the elimination of an entire people without the galaxy knowing about it. The negotiations continued for weeks. Every detail was fought over, every clause debated. Some species refused to accept human oversight. Others demanded that the humans share their advanced technology. A few threatened to leave galactic civilization entirely rather than submit to human authority. But in the end, fear won over pride. Fear of human weapons. Fear of human determination. Fear of what would happen if the galaxy fractured completely. The Terran Accords were signed on the anniversary of Operation Gentle Guidance. The ceremony took place on a neutral space station built specifically for the occasion. Representatives from every galactic species attended, even those who had voted against the treaty. Admiral Chen stood at the podium, wearing her dress uniform with its simple decorations. Behind her, the flags of 847 different species hung in careful rows. At the center, for the first time in galactic history, flew the flag of Earth. "Today marks the end of one era and the beginning of another," she said to the assembled delegates. "For too long, the galaxy has operated on the principle that might makes right, that the strong have the authority to decide who lives and who dies. That principle ends today. The treaty established human sovereignty over a third of galactic space. It created oversight committees with human representation. It required transparency in all council operations. Most importantly, it established a human monitoring corps, a force dedicated to protecting developing species from interference." As Chen signed the final document, she thought about the children growing up in human colonies across the galaxy. They would never know the fear of wondering if their species deserved to exist. They would grow up in a universe where the right to life was protected by law, not dependent on the convenience of more powerful species. The ceremony ended with a moment of silence for all the species that hadn't survived long enough to see this day. 17 civilizations that had been eliminated before they could fight back. Billions of beings who had died for crime of being inconvenient. But their deaths had not been meaningless. They had taught humanity a lesson that the galaxy would never forget. Some species refuse to die quietly. Some people fight back when you try to murder them. And sometimes, if you push hard enough, the prey becomes a predator. The galaxy was safe now, safe from external threats, and more importantly, safe from itself. Humanity had taken on the role of watchdog, ensuring that never again would a council meeting decide the fate of entire species in secret. It was not the future anyone had expected, but it was a future where children of every species could look up at the stars and know that their right to reach for them was protected by the survivors of humanity's darkest hour. The enemy had been human all along, but in the end, that enemy had become the galaxy's greatest protector.